Hello. In this video, I want to talk a bit about Gunbreaker in Dragonsong, because I've seen a lot of people have issues with its rotation and complain about the way it builds cartridges with the way that the phases can phase. A lot of stuff jumps really fast. There's not a lot of time for you to build resources on Gunbreaker, so people can have issues with it, and that can only be exemplified by the fact that your team can kill things faster than probably intended, so you can kind of get screwed out of cartridges and such like that. So I kind of just want to go through some of my thought process when I was making my rotation for this this fight. The first thing I want to start with here, for this first Thornton phase, this can kind of set the pace for the rest of the fight. At least until you get to around like Nidhogg, it can set the rest of the pace for this section of the fight. Just this start. The first thing to keep in mind for the start here is you kind of want to get your dot on cooldown as fast as possible, because your dot, you want to get as much length out of it as possible. So it's pretty important that you put up your dot ASAP, which means you probably want to potion ASAP, aka before the pull, and you probably want to know Mercy before the pull as well, so that you can get your dot as buffed as possible on the boss as fast as possible, so that it can tick. One thing that's really important about starting this, and I'll skip a little bit ahead here, is I pop my potion at 3 seconds, and then I pop my No Mercy at like 2 to 1. I kind of got lazy with the timing here, and I didn't really care about the final GCD on it too much. I mostly just wanted to get it going as late as possible while not cutting into my GCD. And the reason why is because this phase is pretty infamous for Gunbreaker, because of the way Thornton jumps very fast on this phase. And if you do not get things almost exactly down from the start of the pull to the end of the pull, you will miss potency and you can potentially miss cartridges. I will say before I go too much into this opener that you technically can leave this phase with 2 cartridges instead of 3. It's still fine because the next phase doesn't really have raid buffs. So you're not really missing out on anything if you delay stuff, but it will turn your rotation to be a little bit wonky if you go in with 2 cartridges instead of 3. You'll also probably be losing potency if you're going in with 2 instead of 3, at least in this starting section right here. So the reason why I don't care as much about my No Mercy being completely exact is because I want my GCD to be more exact than I care about the No Mercy. So I need to pop it early enough that it doesn't clip. The reason why I go into that is because this start right here, there's a little trick that I figured out with Gunbreaker, where you can actually, at around 1 second, if you sprint and jump at Thornton, you can get right next to him like this at the start without him actually getting aggroed and pulled, which is good because I'm already sitting here spamming my dot to be able to get on to him, because like I said, time is very crucial with your opener on Gunbreaker here. And I found with this running jump trick, unless someone actually just pulls early, you usually are always set up to either be the first person to pull right on time, or you can pull as soon as someone else is kind of pulling early, because I know my Dragoon had talked about this in this group, where they needed to have a similar type of restrictive rotation where they needed to hit the boss as early as possible. So I was either the first person to hit it, or usually it was him. But yeah, this running jump technique right here to not aggro Thornton is pretty useful for getting your stuff up ASAP. So here, another thing, and you'll notice this throughout the rest of the fight, a really big thing about a lot of the Thornton phases, but this fight in general, is you can sneak in little blasting zone charges in places where you may not think you would be able to because of the phase, as long as you do them super early. So you'll see here when I jump in, one of the first things, literally the first thing I do right after my GCD is Blasting Zone. And that's because if you do it this early, you can actually get another one before he jumps. I also go into Bloodfest there. Bloodfest is very crucial. And I guess I was just looking at the 6.2 patch notes, and I guess this won't matter as much going into 6.2 because stuff will be kind of different. But just as a think back to the past of how it's been so far, you want not No Mercy. You want Bloodfest to be as consistently up as possible. You want it to be constantly on cooldown, so you want to get it on cooldown as fast as possible, so that you can work around your cartridges more easily throughout this fight. So that's why I opt to go into that first. And then I kind of save my dot here, just my second dot here, just to try and get in the raid buff, since that one isn't as necessary as your GCD one. And it's a shorter timer as well, so it doesn't matter as much if you delay it. Now, one thing right here, if you follow this opener to a vault, one thing I'll tell you right here is you kind of want to be through this second part of your Gnashing Fang combo by around this time in the cast bar. That way you know you're on track to be able to finish this phase correctly. Another tell is right here. If you can get off double down before he starts these first cleaves, you're probably on track. And this, by the way, this is playing at 2.41 GCV. So if you can get this double down before he is doing these cleaves, that means you're probably on track to get everything correctly by the end of this phase. So from here, what you want to do is you want to avoid your burst strike. You just want to focus on building cartridges after you spent through Gnashing Fang and Double Down. Another thing I want to point out right here, this animation before he goes into his final cast, this is another one that can kind of tell you where you are in your rotation and whether or not you need to change to get your 3 cartridges. When he finishes this and he starts this cast, you should be kind of pretty much through this this 1-2-3 combo. You should be ending that 1-2-3 combo as he's starting the cast here, and that will tell you if you're starting this combo or this last hit of this combo when he starts to cast, you're probably behind. You want to be having the animation of it almost finish by the time he starts that cast to show that you're on time. You'll see there the cast. And what I mean is right here, you get just enough time to get this blasting zone off and then end your combo here before he jumps and get your last cartridge. Now the thing about it is if you get behind it all in this opener, what you need to do instead is right here. If you get here and you're behind in any of these points, and you don't think you can make it, there are 2 paths you can go. One path, if you think you can make the 1-2-3, I've found skipping the blasting zone at the end unlocks my GCD enough that I can sometimes get this off for the last cartridge, but I wouldn't always count on it. If you're really far behind, what you should do is just do a 1-2 of your AoE combo. So, and then you're free to use your blasting zone on that, just to make sure that you get this 3rd cartridge, if that's what you're planning around going for. That's really important for this opener though. So let's see from there. Okay, so from here, there's one thing I want to point out during this section right here. Well, I guess 2 things actually. I pointed out one of these when I did a video like this for Warrior, and Gunbreaker can kind of do the same thing that Warrior does. And by kind of, I mean the exact same thing. So if you're planning to not use a super cooldown on these upcoming tank tethers, so you're not trying to use Bolide or Living Dead or Home Gang or Hollowed on these, you want some type of mitigation, obviously, for when you get down for the count. One thing that Gunbreaker and Warrior can do is they can give Heart of Corundum or Bloodwetting to themselves or their co-tanks during this phase, and it will have their secondary effects last until they get knocked down, and then it will come back up for the next buster, whether it be the Heavenly Heal or the Cleaves afterwards, after that mechanic. So what I'm going to show you here, our Dark Knight was the one that was having issues dying to the tank tethers when we first started progging this. So you'll see here, I'm actually targeted on my Dark Knight once this phase starts. And once you move in here for these dodges, you can throw Corundum or Bloodwetting on either yourself or your co-tank, whichever one needs the shield or the extra heal. Another thing on Gunbreaker specifically is right here, once you're moving for this dodge, you can set up Heart of Light for the next mechanic. Dark Missionary too, if you're playing Dark Knight. You can do it as you do that dodge and it'll last for that mechanic. But keep an eye on this right here, the secondary effect of Heart of Corundum on Laura the Dark Knight. Another thing here too is because I'm giving them Corundum, I pop a little bit extra here for myself. So I pop Nebula, Camouflage, and an Aurora on myself for this knockdown. But you'll see here on Laura, they still have that leftover Heart of Corundum. And you'll see here, I'm not even sure if it pops. Yeah, okay, so it pops right there. So as soon as they go down, it pops right there and they get healed from it. You can do the same thing with Warrior. It's not, I mean, it's kind of effective. They still get the shield, but it's not like, I'd say Corundum is probably a little bit better. But either or, if you're playing Warrior or Gunbreaker and you're not planning to, one of your tanks is not planning to super cooldown this, at least one of them, I would recommend using that tech, because you will see here, once we come back, I'll just go over this cooldown rotation real quick before I go into DPS rotation. Once we come back, by the time this Heavenly Heal would come up, this Corundum, by the time this Ancient Quagga is finished, this Corundum is back. So no matter if you're doing, no matter if you're taking the Heavenly Heal afterwards as the Gunbreaker or Warrior, or you're taking the Cleaves, Corundum and Bloodwetting will be back up in time for the next buster, no matter which one it is. So it's literally just free mitigation or a heal that you can have for the knockdown tethers. So I'll go back here a bit. One thing for Gunbreaker, you want to dash back so that you can start hitting the boss as fast as possible. But you want to start here with a Gnashing Fang combo. And you also see I have the 3 cartridges here from before. You want to start with a Gnashing Fang combo because you can actually get through most of, if not all of, a Gnashing Fang combo again before he jumps. So you'll see here I jump in, Gnashing Fang, do the Ready to Rip into my No Mercy, and then put up my dot next, and then Blasting Zone, so that can be on cooldown as well. And then just dot, finish the rest of the rotation into double down. If you go into this with 2 cartridges instead of 3, like I said, it is okay. The only difference is that this double down will be delayed. You'll need to go through another 1, 2, 3 combo before you can do this double down. And at the end of this, I think you'll end up on this GCD here before your last Gnashing Fang. That's the only difference. So it's technically okay to go in with 2, but you want to go in with 3 to make it more of a smooth rotation. So you'll see here, another thing I really liked about this part coming back, I'll backtrack a bit. So I took the Cleaves in this. It might be a bit different if you're taking the Heavenly Heal, but I took the Cleaves. So one thing I like to do is by the time this double down comes up, Heavenly Heal should already be starting. So that's a perfect time, since you don't have any follow-up to double down, to Voke and then Reprisal for this Heavenly Heal into the 3 Cleaves. It's really good for mitigation there. And then I'll pop Rampart, and then since my Heart of Corundum is back, and since Corundum is so strong, you can get away with just Rampart, Corundum, and a bit of shields from your healers. or any mitigation that your melees or whatever it might have. And then you'll see here, after I end this No Mercy, you'll see this Bloodfest is coming back up, and then I finish on this. So like I said, if you come in with 2, I think you'll end up on this GCD instead, and then you'll go into your Gnashing Fang, which is still fine. It's just, it looks weirder. It's not as comfortable or clean as opposed to going in with 3 cartridges. But you end here with this Gnashing Fang, and you also want a Bloodfest here so that you'll have 3 cartridges for when he comes back the last time after Meteors, and just to keep Bloodfest on cooldown. Again, that will change a bit in 6.2, but like I said, this is a look at it before 6.2, so I'm just going to make mention of it. And then here as well, you get that blasting zone before he leaves, and you can get as much as your Gnashing Fang as possible. So I'm going to skip here a bit to Meteors. There's not really, I talked about in the Warrior video how you could pre-pop and release here. You don't really do that on Gunbreaker, but you can pre-pop No Mercy here. And this is kind of where your rotation will kind of start to change a bit. And I would say that this is based on your team's damage output. My team for this reprog group had very high DPS, and we killed things very fast. So for me, I opted to use No Mercy ASAP, so that it would line up better for Nidhogg and then Eyes. Another thing you can do though is if your DPS is a bit slower, you can probably get away with going 1 GCD into No Mercy and then Gnashing Fang and finishing it like that. If you choose to do No Mercy early, one thing that I used is this knight right here. I believe it's Grenot. Right here, when he begins to phase out like this, that's your cue to pop No Mercy. So that's why I have my camera facing him, because that will pop it. Because for our group specifically, based on how fast we killed the boss, I needed to pop No Mercy this early so that it would come up in the time I needed it during Nidhogg, and I'll show you that once we get to Nidhogg. But I pop No Mercy there, Thornton appears, and I'm directly into Gnashing Fang immediately. The one thing about this though is you can cycle through all your other cooldowns as fast as possible, but you can save on to Double Down and 1 dash for his buff that comes up here. Because as you end right there, your Double Down comes up and it's super buffed. And you also get your dash in there too, just for a little bit of extra damage. Another thing here is that fast Gnashing Fang. This is another reason why I chose to do that opener where I Gnashing Fang immediately, is because you see here, after the first swings, he's already at 6% and dying. So I want to do that Gnashing Fang ASAP. Another thing I've been to point out too is I also do this for Blasting Zone. Blasting Zone I actually use, let's see. Yeah, since I use No Mercy before Thornton comes back, as soon as I press Gnashing Fang, before I even pop the Ready to Rip, I press Blasting Zone here, just to get it on cooldown as fast as possible. And that's a running thing for me for most of this fight, is I try to keep Blasting Zone on CD as much as possible, as fast as possible, because I need it to come back before we phase through places. Because our DPS was that high. So you'll see here, like at the end of this, I'm just barely getting enough time for this Gnashing Fang and this Blasting Zone before he's literally dead. And I also, just because our Dark Knight died, I was able to sneak in the Bloodfest there. Usually if everyone stays alive at the end of that phase, there's not enough time to get that Bloodfest. So sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. It doesn't really matter though, at least on the 90 seconds that it was in 6.2 or before 6.2. It doesn't really matter if you use it here or as soon as Nidhogg drops. But I like to keep it on cooldown, so it felt better to end here. So with that, Thornton is down, and then we go into Nidhogg. So now for Nidhogg. So the start of this, I replicate a bit of what I did on Warrior at the start, because I tanked this on Warrior main tank as well for Nidhogg, where I pop a Nebula and Camouflage here at the start just to help with the autos and the initial damage as well. So here, with the rotation that I did, you can get through one Burst Strike to bring you down to 2, and then re-up your cartridges here, and then it will lead directly into No Mercy. If you do the reopener at the end of Thornton, where you do 1 GCD into No Mercy Gnashing Fang, you can actually do, I found it better to do 2 Burst Strikes at the start of Nidhogg, and then fill up on your cartridges and press No Mercy Gnashing Fang ASAP after that. You'll see me do the early No Mercy one in this video, but just in case you're going off of that timeline, that's kind of what you're going to be looking at once you get into Nidhogg. So the start of here, pretty much another thing here is you'll see once I'm finished with that combo, my No Mercy is just barely coming off cooldown. I press that, I go into Gnashing Fang, and again, since that No Mercy is earlier, I pop this Blasting Zone ASAP. Another reason why I do that early No Mercy at the end of Thornton is because I need things to come up ASAP in Nidhogg and going into Eyes. And you'll see that's the reason why I'm pressing Gnashing Fang and Blasting Zone so early right here. And you'll see as this rotation kind of goes through what ends up happening. So here it's just doing Nidhogg mechanics. I don't know if there's too much I need to touch on here besides just keep things on cooldown. So I'm gonna skip a bit in Nidhogg. I want to get to the towers. Here. Okay. So if you are doing I'll go over the rotation that I'm not doing first. So if you're going with the rotation where you ended Thornton by starting with 1 GCD into No Mercy Gnashing Fang, this potion window here will probably look pretty standard to anybody who's played Gunbreaker. You'll be able to easily do like your 1-2, then No Mercy, or sorry, your one potion 2, and then No Mercy into Gnashing Fang, and do, you know, the rest of your No Mercy Bloodfest type burst combo. But here, since I'm doing stuff so early, it's a bit different on this rotation. So here, I potion before the Gnashing Fang, before the No Mercy. I pop Gnashing Fang earlier because it actually comes up a bit before No Mercy, and then I do the Ready to Rip into No Mercy here. And then as I'm doing my dot, I will pop my Blasting Zone here, and also my dot, while I'm getting the tether. And somewhere in here, you need to press your invuln. You can pretty much press your invuln if you're invulning this. Pretty much as soon as the towers like hit, as soon as the dragons come down, you can press your invuln. It should last until the Buster. I pressed mine a bit late though, so it's right here. Now, one thing for this ending rotation for me and for our group specifically is once I get this refresh from Bloodfest right here, I opt to only do 2 Burst Strikes here, and I leave this last cartridge. The reason why is because I plan to Gnashing Fang before Nidhogg leaves here. I looked over a lot of parses for this fight as I was progressing through it for Gunbreaker, and I noticed a lot of Gunbreakers tried to leave this phase with 3 cartridges and immediately Gnashing Fang at the start of Eyes. I tried that a bit myself, and I think it is good if your team's DPS is good for it. But our team demolished Eyes constantly. So it was very hard to keep up with that rotation and get as much DPS in it during that phase as possible. So I chose to go even earlier, which is another reason, once again, why I pressed Gnashing Fang and Blasting Zone so early, so that I can get them before Nidhogg jumps here instead of at the very start of Eyes. So you'll see me stay right here at 1 cartridge, and then I'll go into my 1-2-3 combo where I will build 1 more cartridge here, and this will immediately go into this Gnashing Fang before he can jump, and I will also get my Blasting Zone off before he can jump here. And I got a little bit extra GCDs here, usually after that last hit, that last continuation of Gnashing Fang is usually when he dies, but because our Dark Knight was going in with a weakness from the last phase, I got 2 extra GCDs. It doesn't really matter about these. If you end on that last Gnashing Fang, it's fine. It's mostly, as long as you're ending on this 1 cartridge, that's the important part. Because you'll see here at the start of Eyes, what I do is I actually jump in again, and I start to build up for my No Mercy here. And I hold this Gnashing Fang. This is the one time I hold Gnashing Fang. I hold this Gnashing Fang, and I hold this Blasting Zone until my No Mercy comes up. And then I immediately pop off with those. And this is when, again, when I use them very early, so that I can use them again in this phase, hopefully, if we don't kill Eyes too fast. So that's what I opted to do. I do think it's probably more optimal to use Gnashing Fang at the start of these Eyes, but that is purely if your team's DPS can allow it. But because we have things like Dragoon, when we have Dancer that can pad on both of these Eyes, it's incredibly difficult to keep them alive long enough to be able to do that rotation reliably and successfully. So I chose to do things faster like this for our group. So you'll see when I come back over here, pretty much, now one thing I will point out for Eyes here, is another time that I actually hold Gnashing Fang and Blasting Zone. Well, I think I just used Blasting Zone, but I hold Gnashing Fang. I hold Gnashing Fang here specifically until I get to 2 cartridges. The reason why is because I want to start my Gnashing Fang combo and get through it, but I also want to get Bloodfest on cooldown by the end of this phase and leave this phase with 3 cartridges. So the way I found, based on our kill times, was the best way I found was to finish both of my 1-2-3 combos here to get both of these stacks so that I can Burst Strike into Gnashing Fang right here. And then now for the rest of this Eye phase, I am free to not worry about overcapping any of these Bloodfest cartridges that I may get by doing it like that. And I don't get stuck, because one problem I ran into is I would get stuck midway through my 1-2-3 combo at the end of this phase, which is also something I didn't want to do. So I just go ahead, finish those combos, and then do my cartridge requiring actions after the combos are finished, so I don't get stuck in a weird place. Because now I'm stuck here with these 3, and I don't want to overcap them. But I also don't want to be missing out on DPS by, I guess, being stuck behind a combo. Because I guess what I'm trying to say is if I started this with the one cartridge and I went into Gnashing Fang here, I could run into an issue where I need to do another combo to keep up damage, but I really want to use Bloodfest ASAP before the Eyes die, because I want to go into 3. So you may either overcap on cartridge or just drop your combo so that you don't lose anything, you know. So that's why I just get my combos out of the way and then use my cartridge spenders. I hope that makes sense, but essentially I just want to get through the combos ASAP so that they're not in the way for later. So from here, the end of Eyes here, one thing that I like to do, usually this thing would die a little bit faster, but I'm kind of just spamming my 1 here, is I will literally just spam my 1 for like 1 or 2 GCDs at the end of this. I spammed it for like 4 there because it actually died slower than normal. But I like to end right here at this GCD, the second part of my combo. I like to end there going into the time rewind. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back into the time rewind here. Once again, I like to pick up off that combo right there. And then this is kind of a standard-ish No Mercy right here. I go into this, but one thing, once again, keeping Blasting Zone on cooldown as fast as possible. Another thing, this double down I opt to use before my dot here. The reason why I choose to use double down here earlier than my dot is because this double down, depending on how fast your group gets through Hoshifon's Sphere, can determine how your double down will go for P5 into P6. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But that's the reason why I do it before my dot here, is because I need it on cooldown ASAP. More so than I care about my dot. Because double down is used for a lot of padding. A lot of padding on 2 targets. So I'll show you why I use that early. So let's go through here. At the end of the time skip, I try to spam through this as fast as possible. This is also very important. This Blasting Zone, once again, being on cooldown as fast as possible. Even though Charbert does not need it at this point, I want it on cooldown ASAP. So I spam it on him regardless, and we don't really need the damage for Hoshifon's Sphere. So I just use it ASAP, and I'll show you why. So ending here, I try to end this phase on 2 cartridges. You actually see here I don't end it on 2, which kind of messes up this rotation going in to the next Thornton piece, but I'll show you regardless what ends up happening. So here, ideally what you want, because I use that double down early in that other phase, it comes back up just in time when Thornton comes, which is important because you want it on cooldown as fast as possible here, as fast as possible after he comes from Wrath of the Heavens, and so that you can get it as fast as possible for the start of Meteors, because you want it as fast as possible for Dragons. So all that goes back to the start of time skip of why I use double down ASAP, because I need it to come up ASAP for pretty much the rest of the fight until final phase. So yeah, it's very important to try and get it there. And that's another reason why you really want to end that part on 2 cartridges so you can use this ASAP. I do not get it here, which is unfortunate, but I'm telling you that's the reason why you want to do it. At least have 2 cartridges going into this phase so that you can do double down ASAP, so that it will line up with the rest of your stuff. Another thing here that I think I miss in this start, and I'll skip ahead a bit just to see if I do. I'm pretty sure I do, just based on what I just saw though. Oh no, I actually get it. It ghosts a bit, but at the start of this phase, I actually started to opt to do a No Mercy early, like before he jumps, or before he lands, should I say, and he's targetable, kind of like the start of the fight. Ideally, what you want to do is be able to use this. Sometimes I would straight up use Blasting Zone, and I kind of think it's probably optimal just so it doesn't ghost. I actually use Blasting Zone before a GCD on him here, just because I need it to come up ASAP, because once again, you can get a Blasting Zone right before he jumps. And the other thing about using Blasting Zone as fast as possible is it's kind of like double down, where the faster you use Blasting Zone in this phase for the first and second one, the faster you can use it in after he comes back after Wrath of the Heavens, which is also important because you need to be able to squeeze in 2 there for optimal damage as well. So I bite the bullet and just use it before a GCD here, and that's another reason why I pop No Mercy before he lands, just so I can do that. So here I'm using this double down, going through the rest of the combo here, putting up my dot. It's kind of late, so it's not going to get like too much here. One thing I want to point out about cartridges, I think I go into, let's see, I go into Wrath of the Heavens with 3 cartridges, yes, but you want to be like ending your cartridges combos as you're going into Wrath, because you kind of want to either be at no combo started or like 1 hit started going into the little interlude after Wrath of the Heavens, so that you have enough time for your stuff to come back up and you don't overcap on cartridges. So I think I limit myself to, yeah, I limit myself to 1 burst strike in this phase, just to keep this 1 cartridge so that I end with 3. That's another important thing. And like I said, with that blasting zone, technically I get it at the end here, but it ghosts. If you had used it before the GCD, you can get it without ghosting. And if you use it that early, it's better for the next part when he comes after the Wrath of the Heavens, because you will not run into ghosting again. So I'm going to show that again. And then let's go to Wrath of the Heavens. So you'll see here, I'm starting Wrath of the Heavens with no combo started yet, and my stuff is pretty close to being off cooldown. That's the reason why you don't want to be like here, like on this combo, because you don't want to like drop your combo, but you also don't want to wait on it for your cooldowns to come back. So you kind of want to be either on the first head of your combo, just finishing this, or just you haven't started a combo by the time you start this phase. Here, another little trick I found. Since Gunbreaker is kind of going into this big burst right here before Tank Buster, I will pop my cooldowns kind of before stuff actually happens. It's a big thing for Gunbreaker and tanks in general for this fight, is popping cooldowns early, but it really helps here. Because I kind of just throw everything at this heavenly heal since we're swapping. So right here, again, you want to pop stuff ASAP, and like I said, this double down and this blasting zone coming off cooldown as fast as possible is very crucial, because you'll see here, I think I actually get this blasting zone both of them, and you'll see here I just kind of weave in some of my cooldowns like Nebula and such as I can. With Shirt, it's a lot to press, but you can get away with it. Again, I opt not to do a burst strike here because I want to go into the Meteors phase with 3 cartridges, and I need to spend the rest of this phase. Pretty much, it's kind of like a repeat of phase 1, to be honest. This little burst after Wrath, you kind of just want to build up to 3 cartridges again, honestly. And then here, I just barely get that blasting zone once again. I think it technically ghosted there, but if you had used it before the GCD at the very start of this phase, both of these probably wouldn't have ghosted, because you can use them just like 0.1 seconds earlier so that you can actually get the damage. Death of the Heavens. Death of the Heavens, I'm going to skip through this a bit. I think we just do standard Death of the Heavens stuff, so there's not much to talk about for my role there, but I will talk about the damage here. So once you are knocked back here on Gunbreaker, as you see, 1 second. 3, 2, 1 second here. There is not much wiggle room with this double down if you delay it at all, because you want it to come up ASAP for these meteors here, as well as your No Mercy. So this is the reason why I try not to delay double down as much as possible from all the way back in Charybird, because you want it to be back up here so that you can hit these meteors ASAP, and you need to hit these meteors ASAP because you need to use double down on the dragons ASAP before they can jump. So it's important to keep this on cooldown ASAP. I'll keep saying it's very important for maximizing your damage on Gunbreaker here. So you'll see as soon as I go back, it's No Mercy into Double Down, and then my dot, AoE dot. I kind of get unlucky with this meteor here because they were LBing it, but that's okay. I also want to go into this Gnashing Fang as fast as possible. That's the reason why I want to go into this phase with 3 cartridges, so I could use Gnashing Fang right after my Double Down and stuff. Because technically, depending on your group's damage, you can get another Gnashing Fang at the end. Also, this dot will screw you. This dot right here, I always throw it on Thornton because it's technically still a No Mercy and I want to get my use out of it. But depending on how fast or slow you kill the meteors and you kill Thornton, this dot can get really out of whack for Double Dragon's phase, and I think you'll see it in this VOD. But it can get really out of whack. I say use it anyway, but just know that it will be weird for dragons. And I'll point that out once we get to it. So here, I'm just going through the end of the rotation for the No Mercy. I think I tried to save some cartridges here so that I could do this Gnashing Fang at the end. I'm not sure. Yeah, I actually do it here. We had a little enough DPS this time around that I was able to get the whole thing off before he falls and I have to back away from him. Also for Double Dragon's phase, I like to go in with either max cartridges depending on your speed of Double Down and No Mercy, or 2 cartridges, so that you can kind of do like a 1-2-3 combo or a 1-2 AoE combo going into Double Dragons to start there. You may have to just play around with your group's DPS, especially as they get more comfortable with the fight, to see what works best cartridge wise going in, but I would say either 2 or 3 is probably the sweet spot. Okay, so Double Dragons. So once again, how many times have I told you that No Mercy and Double Down, specifically Double Down, timing matters a lot ever since Charibert. So depending on how fast you use that Double Down in Meteors, which goes all the way back to Charibert, and depending on how fast your group kills Meteors and Thornton, your dragons can be really good or really wonky. So you'll see here, since I ended with 2 cartridges because I did that Gnashing Fang, my stuff is kind of weird because I kind of need to take an extra GCD past when I should have probably used No Mercy Double Down, just to start No Mercy with 3 cartridges, which isn't super great. But you want to use that stuff ASAP. And you'll notice too at the bottom, this dot timer, like I said, it's already starting to get a bit weird. Usually it's always like Gnashing Fang into dot or Double Down and then the other, but this is severely delayed because of the Meteor's phase and how you use No Mercy in that phase. So you'll see it come up later, pretty much around like where the tank busters are. Which is pretty weird. It's pretty weird. So just make sure you're still using your dot in this phase because it's very easy to forget, especially since this phase is very tank focused. Now in this phase, one thing I'll mention is you can AoE these ads on Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker AoE is worth on 2 targets. The one thing you have to weigh though is you need to weigh uptime and tank busters. Like for example, at the start here, after this Gnashing Fang, I think I opt to just go into my 1-2-3 here. Well, I do my dot, but then I just go into my 1-2-3 because this tank buster could have, like, it's a stack this time, but it could have been where I need to go up here next to Praisevogel, which means my AoE, if I start that combo, is kind of worthless. So you need to be mindful of when you can get away with successful AoEs, at least enough to get to your cartridge, as opposed to just doing your single target, and the risk reward that comes with that. Let's see, another thing here. I do try and get through some of these cartridges before this gnashing thing and stuff comes up, because I need to pop cooldowns here and I need to pop this Bloodfest. So try and empty out. I think one thing I ran into is I would usually end up with like 2 cartridges around when my gnashing thing is coming up. So just make sure you use like an AoE combo ender to get rid of that last cartridge or something like that before a gnashing thing comes up. Just so you can freely use your stuff. Now, one thing about cooldown rotation for Gunbreaker here. I'm not entirely sure about how you should do it if you plan to bolide the cauterizes. If you plan to bolide the cauterizes, I think you can kind of just do whatever lets you live for all of these tank busters. But if you plan to do a 6-1-1, which is 6 people in 1 Aquamorn stack, 1 tank in 1 Aquamorn stack, and the other tank in the last Aquamorn stack with an invuln for the final phase, if you plan to do a 6-1-1 there, you cannot use, at least if you're going to be the one that's doing 6-1-1 as the Gunbreaker, you cannot use Bolide for the Cauterize here, which means you need to plan your cooldown rotation around not using that Bolide for the Cauterize, and you need to survive the Cauterize. So, the way to do this on Gunbreaker, I'll go through each one of the tank busters. For this first one, I use, well, let me go to the actual first one. The actual first one here, no matter if it's stack or if it's solo buster, what I will do here is after the second hit of my boss here is when I'm looking to pop my Nebula. No matter which boss you're tanking, the second auto is when I'm looking to pop Nebula. That will last you for whatever happens here. If you don't need it, you just don't need it, that's fine. You'll need it later for the Cauterize. But you need to get it on cooldown ASAP. So you use it first here. Depending on if you get the buster, if your co-tank gets the buster, or if you need to share, you can use Corundum either on yourself for the share, or if it's your buster, or Corundum on your co-tank if it's their buster. It's share here, so I just use Corundum on myself. That's your 2 cooldowns for this first buster, no matter what. And they're always like that. You always do it like that. Make sure to also use Corundum kind of towards the end of the cast of it so that you can get the extra mitigation. For this next buster, the first Hollowed Wings, once this double party stack goes out, that's your cue to pop Rampart. And this Rampart will last to the next Hollowed Wing. It's the same on every tank. You can do that for every tank. And I did this for Warrior even when I wasn't doing... Well, Warrior's kind of different. You can do 6-1-1 regardless. But for every tank, you can always pop Rampart as soon as that goes out, and it will last for the first Hollowed Wings. So that's what I do. Plus, once again, I use Corundum for this Hollowed Wings. And again, you want to use it towards the end of the cast here so that you can get the full mitigation. And Gunbreaker actually has a really good time with that one. My HP barely dropped. Very good. Granted, I got 2 heals. An Excog and the Corundum heal. But my HP is very healthy. So here, one thing, depending on how you do this, if your tanks are going to be swapping here, one word of advice, going into Froth Flames, and I think you'll see me do this maybe in this VOD, save a dash, and this is on all tanks if you are responsible for this swap, whether, not this swap here, but the swap after, I'll just go here, after Froth here. If you're responsible for this swap, whether you are swapping it off of you, or you are, going to be getting the Nidhogg debuff, save a dash at the end of Froth Flames. Because sometimes you can get into positions that are further, like for example, you may end up like here under Nidhogg or under Hracefelder, and you need to meet up in the middle to swap that. You save a dash so that if you're far from the middle, you can look at the other dragon, and like this, you can dash to it and get to middle ASAP, because this is a very fast pass. So if your tanks are doing that, I recommend both of them save a dash for that. Now I'll go back a bit. to the start of Hoth. Now, I think I messed it up in this video. Pretty sure I messed it up in this video. Yeah, because Trace Holder is already gone. But you'll see how, once again, that double down timing, mine is short here. And that's with trying to time it. That's how fast our DPS was on Meteors and Thornton. And my bad cartridge management at the start of this phase. This double down and No Mercy should be coming up before Hraesvelgr jumps for Hoth Flames, so that you can use it to hit both bosses and pad your damage on both of them. I'm a bit slow here, so I only get it on Nidhogg. Also, you can get your dot on them if you're fast enough on Hraesvelgr before he jumps. Once again, that's why you want double down on cooldown ASAP. It all matters, all from Charibird. And it, once again, it also matters on your team's DPS, whether or not you can pull that off. But if you can, it's very nice for damage. Very nice. So here, another thing too, we actually get downtime on this. And you'll see, even though my dot is really slow, I try and sneak it in before we leave on Nidhogg right there. You can get away with it if you sprint or if you have Expedient. You can get away with it. Try and dot before you leave, or else it's going to get even more misaligned than it already was. Especially if you get downtime, because you're going to be away from the boss for a very long time. So try and sneak it in if you can. Don't kill yourself. Don't kill your party to do it. But if you can do it, if you think you can pull it off, and you're practiced with it, then try and do it. And you can make it and just sprint away. Also, pop Heart of Light for this. It's very good for the Aquamorns since it's multi big hits, and it lasts for all of them. And then here, like I said, again, save a dash for Hoth Flames. This is on all tanks. If you have to deal with this pass, whether you're picking it up or passing, do that. Save a dash. Here you get a Gnashing Fang, and this one can be kind of annoying because this is right before Hand of Pain. So you need to kind of be looking at both bosses. So you'll see me here like tabbing between both bosses mid Gnashing Fang to try and make sure I don't like push one too far. Then for this next Hollowed Wings, this is where you use Camouflage and Corundum for this one. And this is, once again, so that you do not need to Bolide the Cauterize. Now, once again, your stuff should be lining up here. You may have to wait for this pass here. I was waiting for this pass here so that I can move in to double down and dot both the bosses here before the tank busters go out, and then get my dot off. Now, here with the busters, I do not have to necessarily deal with the busters this time because it's on my co-tank. And since we're doing 611 for the last phase, I can't even help them with Corundum. So I'm essentially free right here. I just have to dodge the mechanics. But I will still point out, this will be a Rampart and Nebula, but you need to time them, because they need to be timed for this buster as well as the Cauterize. Rampart you can get away with a bit earlier. I would say pretty much as soon as the cast bar goes out, you can probably give yourself like a second and you can pop Rampart and it will last for the rest of it. Nebula, on the other hand, and this is for all the tanks that would be doing this besides like Warrior. This for like Dark Knight and Paladin as well. You want to pop your Nebula or Sentinel or Shadow Wall around here, around the REA area of Worm's Breath, there, to cover this buster if you had to take it or if you had to do the double buster. The reason why is because if you do not press it that late, well, if you don't press it exactly then it won't go off in time for the buster, so you'll freaking die. But if you press it earlier in the cast, you have a very high likelihood that it will fall off before this Cauterize goes right here. And like I said in this video, I got the easy easy road where I didn't really need to worry about that because I didn't deal with the buster, so I could just pop them at my own leisure. But you would want to pop them at specifically those times, because if you don't, it will fall off right before this cauterize and you'll die. You need that 30% from Nebula or whatever to survive this reliably. So here at the end, I actually just used like random stuff at the end because our damage was so high. Hracefoger's like already dead, and then I was about to die, and I went into this phase, the final phase, one time with 2 cartridges, and I said I'm never doing that again. So I would rather just eat a cartridge at the end of this phase than potentially go into the next phase with 2 cartridges. So I just do 1, 2, 3 combo just for the heck of it, just for damage. It doesn't really matter at the end. I would say just 100% going to final phase with 3 cartridges. That's what you want. So now for final phase, I'm gonna skip a bit. Once again, you can actually do this a little bit earlier than Warrior can with Shake It Off. Shake It Off, you would wait until like the end of the second bleed falls off to pop your stuff so it doesn't get eaten because it's a shield. But since you're on Gunbreaker, you can technically pop Heart of Light around. I do like 5, 4, 3 somewhere in that second bleed, and it'll last for the rest. Doesn't really matter if you use it after it falls off either, but that's just what I do. Now, going into this phase, one thing, I pointed this out in my Warrior video as well, and I'll point it out just in case someone doesn't see that video and they see this one, for Gunbreaker specifically. If you are tanking this fight, when it comes to Exaflare positioning, you want to look for this arrow right here on the ground. And this is where we start out at the very start of the fight, and this is where you want him to be positioned before Exaflares always go out, either here or the arrow that's like over here on the other side. North and south is where these are, but there's always an arrow indicator like this. That will set you up for the easy Exaflare dodges in the back, because it's like this little X that's like right here underneath my hotbar. That's where you would be dodging for the Exaflares. So you want to sit on this line as that tank before Exaflares go out, so that you can position him correctly so that your team can dodge the other way into the tail. Now, when you are doing your tank swaps in this phase, specifically for the Exaflare ones, like I just said, you want him to be positioned on these arrows. So whoever is tanking him right before Exaflares, the person who needs to Voke off of him after those 2 autos, wait until the Exaflares go out to do your Voke and your swap. The reason why is because since he's already tanking, just let him position north or south on this marker, and then once Exaflares are perfect, they're set up, then and they're going out, he's already started casting them. That's when you can Voke and do your swap from there. And you'll see here, I actually start with the boss here, but Laura, to get second in aggro, they actually they burst a bit faster and harder on Dark Knight, so I kind of used them as my provoke at the start of this fight, like us together, to Voke him at the start, and I start my rotation. So they're kind of my start, and you can kind of see here. So this pretty much, let's assume that Laura was tanking here. You would want to keep the boss on Laura until this starts for the later Exaflares. And then, as you'll see me, once I go in here to do like the rest of my rotation, I Voke like there. I Voke there, and that's kind of where you want your Voke. Obviously wherever you can fit it after he started Exaflares, but that's what you want. Just so he doesn't turn. That's the point of that. Here I actually cap on our freaking cartridge like an idiot. My rotation for this was actually kind of bad for the ending phase, and I'll point that out. But here, one thing, I just go ahead and pop Camouflage here, and I also, one thing I want to point out here as well, on Gunbreaker specifically, one thing I like to do, I guess let me go into a bit of how we're planning to do this. So I mentioned 611 a couple times during the Dragon's phase. The plan going into these Ockmorns, there are 3 sets of Ockmorns. The first one will be normal with 2 tanks in the south one, and then 2 splits of 3 in the other 2 Akmorns. For the second one, our Dark Knight will be northeast by themselves, using all their cooldowns, while I'm in the south one using Bolide, and then the rest of the team is all in the northwest one together. And then the third one will be the Dark Knight living deading in the south, and I'll be using all my cooldowns in the northeast, and all the rest of the team will be northwest. Because I use Bolide on the second one, I can more frivolously use my cooldowns going up to that second one, because I only need Bolide for that second one. I don't need to necessarily save anything, and everything I used earlier here will be back for the last one. So, knowing that, when I go out for this first Exaflare, I use Corundum on myself here. It's not for this damage mitigation, it kind of goes back into what I used Corundum for at the very start when I talked about the tank tethers. I want it for this heal once I get hit. And I also want to get it on cooldown ASAP. So here, I technically still have this heal as a safety net. And after that first auto, you can actually use Rampart as well. I think I use it a bit late on this one. Yeah, I used it a bit late. But you can use it after the first auto here, and it will last for all of these Akmorns here. And I also pop Camouflage here. If I had used Nebula when I was supposed to for the last Buster in the Dragons, or if our Dragons stayed up just a little bit longer, I would also pop Nebula here after the first hit of this first Akmorn. Just to help me, because the reason why, I think I pop it anyway, maybe, at the end of this Akmorn. I'm not sure if it comes up in time, actually. Yeah, it actually doesn't even come up in time. But normally I would pop it after the first hit of that Akmorn. Just because if you press it after the first hit of this Akmorn, it will last for the rest of the Akmorns in these 2 autos right here before the first Giga Flare. I also get that Heart of Corundum back up here to use on these 2 autos because I used it so early at the start of Exaflare. So it's just a lot of mitigation that you can put on yourself there, which is really good. So here we go into Giga Flare, and this is a pretty normal swap. I'll mention another thing that I mentioned in my Warrior video here. If you are in charge of reprisaling this Giga Flare's edge, I'm going to actually mess up the second one here, and Gunbreaker kind of saved me on this. But you want to use that reprisal pretty much in between E and D of edge. That's because you want to cover all these Giga Flare hits. And if you use it there, it will last. Yeah, pretty much it'll last if you press it there. So go through here for a normal Giga Flare. This is also around where the 2 minutes coming up in your potion, stuff like that. So I'm getting out my burst, and I'm also moving. So this is now south over here, and I'm tanking the boss. And this is, it always goes Exaflare, Akmorn, and Giga Flare for the mechanics. So I already know, since we just did Giga Flare, the next mechanic will be Exaflare. So I'm already trying to look at, pretty much once this Giga Flare is going off, I'm already trying to look, don't kill yourself, by the way. Don't run into a Giga Flare. Wait if you need to, if you're still uncomfortable. But I'm pretty comfortable with that movement. So pretty much after that second Giga Flare goes out, I'm kind of moving here to get away from my party for the next autos. And I'm also honing in on this one, which is south, because I want to hone in on this arrow that I talked about before for the Exaflare positioning. So I'm already here. My Exaflares are already set up. All that needs to happen is the boss just needs to stay on me. Another thing for Giga Flare, the autos after Giga Flares are always super delayed. So I wait a bit before I use this Corundum just to try and get some of the extra benefits out of it, mitigation wise. So I get that here, and then like I said, after these autos, right here, this is when, you know, as tanks, you need to realize, okay, Exaflares are coming out, leave it on this tank, do not evoke immediately, because now my Exaflares are already set up north and south. Now Laura is free to evoke during these Exaflares, and he doesn't swap to the side because someone evoked as they were coming to the north or south. He's already set up, you're good, you get the easy dodge, and it's as easy as that. So coming back in, the next buster, I just popped Corundum here just because I want to live, essentially. But going into the second Akmorn, this is my Bolide, and this is Laura's all in. So I pop Bolide here, and I'm safe. And this is the 6-1-1 I talked about, where one person here, and then the rest of your party is here. Very useful for healing. It's very good if you can pull it off, but it requires some prep work in Dragon's Phase with cooldowns. So here, it's mostly just going through the motions, just normal stuff. You're free to evoke here because it's not an Exaflare, so Laura goes ahead and grabs it. Here, Gunbreaker can actually get away with popping this Heart of Light, and this is what I meant about messing up the Reprisal, and how Gunbreaker saved me. Because I'm Gunbreaker and I could pop Heart of Light here, I actually missed this Reprisal on Gigaflare's edge right here. I miss it. It's really, really late, right there. But we actually survived because I'm on Gunbreaker. Granted, you don't want to take that for advantage. Do your reprisals correctly. But I just want to point out that that is something that can happen with Gunbreaker, because on Warrior, for the second one, you would be using Shake It Off, and because of the way Shake It Off works, you want the heal, so you would use it after the first hit. But if you miss that reprisal as a Warrior, then you could be dead before you can pop Shake It Off. So just something cheeky I got away with there. Here's the Gigaflare. This time Laura is in control of the boss, so they go up to the marker. I try and get away from the party for my stuff, and I'm going to leave it on Laura here, so that they will position for Exaflare, because they're already on the spot. They're already positioned for Exaflare. Now that Exaflare has gone out, now I can put my Stink Stance back on and invoke the boss. Going in here, this is the last. Now, this one right here, if you're doing the same way as me, you probably don't want to use, if your Corundum's even back up, you don't want to use it on this Exaflare when you go out, because you actually want to save it for your last thing, since you will be tanking the last one with all your cooldowns. So here, I think I actually end up, so for one thing, I popped the Rampart here, and I did notice, someone had told me that Gunbreakers had issues because there is a lot of bursts on this last Akmorn. You can pop your stuff early. Like I said here, I pop Rampart after the first hit of the autos, and it'll last me for my Akmorns. Here I pop Nebula before he actually jumps here as well, and I actually get stuck here. I don't know, I got confused for a second where I was in my combo, and popping Corundum. But I pop Corundum here, and now I have all my cooldowns. Technically, you can pop Camouflage here as well, but I actually didn't even need it. And I got stuck here for a second. I was just like, what the heck is going on? I think I was trying to find Corundum to make sure it was up in time, and I was also trying to remember where I was in my combo and my cartridges, but that's just kind of like player error. Normally, you can just go through this normally, and you're going to be fine in here. Like you see, I'm taking like no damage, even though I'm missing my Camouflage. I'm still fine for this part here. And then pretty much from here, we actually just kill it. Like I said, the damage was pretty high in this group, and we actually didn't even use LB. And I think only one set of people died at the end of this enrage. I think I tried to get in as much damage as I could at the very end before it died, but then it goes down. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Gunbreaker, I guess, analysis that I want to do for this fight. Like I said, I think Gunbreaker, a lot of people have issues, especially, I think it can especially just get off on the wrong foot because of how bad the opener can be if you mess it up, or if someone pulls early at the very start of Thornton and you miss out on your 3 cartridges. It can also get really misaligned depending on how your team's damage is, and how fast they push phases. But I still do think Gunbreaker is really strong in this fight. I think Corundum is very, very strong in this fight. Like, really good. I think it does a lot of damage. Double down can be really useful for pushing DPS, like on the meteors, on dragons, just in general. Gunbreaker does a lot of damage. I just think it takes more preparation and optimization and really realizing what's happening with your team and their DPS and your phase pushes to really maximize how Gunbreaker can perform in this fight. But I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just think people have issues with the potential changes to rotation that it can run into. But I wanted to make a video like this to show that there is some method to the madness. There is stuff that you can do consistently, and there's things that you can line up and plan around to know how your rotation will play out in the fight and what you can and can't get away with. And I think that's really important for Gunbreaker and Gunbreaker players in general. This was the first time I really did Gunbreaker. It's something as hard as an ultimate. And this was after I had already progged it on Warrior, and I had a decent understanding of the fight after that. But I think it's really important for Gunbreaker players to realize even though their rotation is kind of restrictive, you can play around with a lot of stuff, even as small as using double down before your dot in your burst, to get things to come up when you need them to in the fight. You really just need to look at like your VODs, at like your FF logs, at other people's FF logs, at other people's point of views, to see what you can and can't get away with. And I think the golden rule of Gunbreaker that I've learned is just keep things on cooldown. You will always succeed more on Gunbreaker if you can successfully find a way to keep your stuff on cooldown. I think it will always line up better if you can keep stuff on cooldown. So that's really important. But I just wanted to make this video to kind of show that, and I hope it helps anybody who's trying to do Gunbreaker on this fight. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. So have a good one, and bye bye.